Today's episode is about AI. We talk about AI everywhere, but we want to go beyond the buzzword, really understand what's working, what's coming next. I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. Vikram Srinivasan, founder of Needl.ai. Vikram brings a rare blend of deep research experience, enterprise leadership, and startup execution. And now he is building a AI company focused on trusted enterprise intelligence. Vikram, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Sachin. Very happy to be here.
Vikram, we'll start with your journey. You have worked across Bell Labs, Target, Academia, now as a founder. What was the moment that made you really feel that the real impact of AI is here and not just research papers and demos?
Right. So I think I've been an academic. I did my PhD in the US. I used to be a professor in Singapore. Then I worked at Bell Labs. We've been using a bunch of highly researchy ideas, math ideas. Then I did a AI startup. We were building search engines for e-commerce retailers, which got acquired by Target. Right. So even then we were using AI, and AI did have impact. Right. But I think if you look at the evolution of AI, AI started in the 1950s, efforts at AI with McCarthy and Minsky and Claude Shannon started in the 50s, and it went through multiple waves of interest, multiple what are called AI winters, where the promise didn't meet actual impact, right? But I think once what changed is, I think, sort of the big data era. So Google and Amazons of the world and Facebooks of the world started acquiring they started building these big data systems, essentially search engines that worked at planetary scale and with billions of users sort of interacting with it, giving feedback signals, etc. Right? So if you see the AI era or the machine learning era, it really started taking off after I would say the early 2000s, right? So you could see it in simple things like spell correction on a Google search, the fact that you could find similar photos to you on Google Photos, so on and so forth. Lots of little interesting things started happening, but AI still required deep expertise for people to bring it to fruition for different kinds of use cases, right? You needed large, even to build a simple, what I'd call a classifier, you would need people with significant machine learning expertise to build some of these. But I think the major breakthrough event, which I guess all of us are aware of, is the date ChatGPT was released, right, in the wild. That was an aha moment. I also remember that very distinctly because it felt like a lot of, what I would require, armies of machine learning engineers to do could now be done with a prompt, right? So that was a step change function in the capability of machines to acquire very general purpose skills that could be applied in a broad category of industries for different kinds of use cases. And I think that has changed the world dramatically. That capability has has sort of democratized AI for you and me and for everyone. And that I think is the step change that's happened.
And from there, how is it now?
So from the ChatGPT era, so I think there's still, while the excitement is there and there is a lot of activity and talk around it. So I think there are niches where AI is exceptionally helpful. I think many of us, I think both of us, for example, on this podcast are probably using some variant of ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity on a daily basis. But what has changed is the sort of the idea of what kind of capabilities you can build into your software products and services, which were unimaginable before, right? So you can bring a layer of intelligence. Lay people can bring a layer of intelligence. Regular software developers can bring a layer of machine intelligence to their products that was unimaginable before without tons of machine learning engineers and a lot of deep expertise. So that is one step change. However, I think what's still, and where I think it's primarily changes is in terms of B2C applications, there is a dramatic step change. In B2B applications, I think it's starting to take off, but it still depends on what the use cases are, what is the kind of accuracy, what are the risks associated with. I think there are a lot of things we're going to be discussing, but I think it's taking off there too, and we can see it, for example, with coding agents taking off, companies like Lovable just shooting off the planet. It's enabling sort of a leverage you get with AI is dramatic, right? So what would take you 20 people to do earlier, you can do it one person, right? So people are now talking about single person $1 billion companies that can be built, right? And that's sort of it, right? It's sort of like having thousands of interns at your disposal who can do all kinds of things for you. That's the step change that happened.
We'll be delving more into B2B, the later section, right? So
Sure.
where your experience lies on the enterprises. What is genuinely new about this AI wave compared to others? Like there have been different waves in different eras, right? So
Yeah, yeah. No, this is absolutely a genuinely new wave, right? Yeah, yeah. So it's essentially what has changed is the fact that you've democratized AI capabilities. So the first wave of AI was more of what is called first order logic, symbolic logic based AI applications with sort of apps like Eliza, which was a chatbot somewhat similar to ChatGPT released in the 70s. Then came the era of sort of what I would call knowledge expert agents and knowledge experts, where you needed to sort of put in a lot of domain knowledge expertise to make it work. Then really came the era of machine learning, where you went beyond sort of simple linear regressions to things like support vector machines. There was early attempts at deep neural networks or neural networks, but we just didn't have the compute and the data to sort of make it work at scale, make it work very well, right? So theoretically, deep neural networks was invented ages ago, right? Invented in the 80s and the 90s. It was well understood what the promise of it was, but we lacked two things. We lacked compute capability. I mean, GPUs were still on the horizon, they were not here yet. And the second is having data at scale, right? And once the internet era happened, both of these problems got solved, which is we now have data at scale, we have compute power at scale. And that is enabling a new wave of applications which we just couldn't have imagined before.
So now we will delve more into the enterprise side of it, where your huge experience lies there, right? So we hear about terms like AI agents, co-pilot. So from what you see inside enterprises, where is AI actually delivering?
Yeah. So what we are seeing is, I mean, so there's a lot of talk about I think AI replacing humans, etc. I don't think we are there yet. I think the agentic world still, I think there's some hype there. Primarily because AI, I mean, the way the current AI architecture is, this large language models architecture is fundamentally, I mean, we are all used to living in a world of software where if you give a certain input, you always know what the output is going to be, right? So these are very deterministic systems, very reliable systems, and you know what you're going to get out of it. Now, the problem with the current AI approach that is coming up is that it is non-deterministic. You give a certain input, you don't know what the output is going to be. It could say X today, it could say Y tomorrow. And in enterprise scenarios, that is a risky world to be in, right? So the question is, how do you sort of bring in determinism over this non-deterministic or probabilistic underlying model, which can do work, say, 85% of the time, right? So what we are seeing is essentially a lot of the hard work in the enterprise is to get it over the hump to say work, say 90, like, I mean, we still can't get to 5 nines reliability, but can we even get to 97, 98% reliability? That's a very, very hard problem. And the second part is really let these AI agents run wild without human supervision, right? What we are seeing is where it's coming into play is a lot of the back office work, a lot of the boring work, the grunge work, where you need to pull information from very different sources of systems, do a lot of manual labor, grunt work. There, understanding complex data, understanding complex documents, interacting with it, synthesizing it, and enabling workflows that sort of make sense of this complex data silos and mess is where it's delivering tremendous value, right? Because these are things humans cannot do at scale if you're dealing with hundreds of terabytes of data. So that's an area where we are seeing tremendous value, but always with human in the loop. Because in enterprise scenarios, every business decision, every information piece that you synthesize, if you get it wrong, the value of getting it, the risk of getting it wrong is extremely high. And we work in financial services space a lot, and there the risk of getting one number wrong can be stupendously high. Right? So that's where we are seeing value, because you can sort of cut down the time of getting certain work done from 10, let's say, by a factor of 10. But all of it that we are seeing is with human supervision, so that the human validates the output of the AI and then gets it done, right? But it's eliminating the grunge work of what a human would do.
So you are in the trust enterprise intelligence, and whatever you have covered now, hallucinations is happening, wrong answers, and complex risk is happening. You just mentioned in high stakes domains like finance and regulatory companies, this is a big risk.
Yeah.
How are the enterprises thinking about deploying the AI safely? What is the
Yeah.
method
So I
used?
think the main thing is one, all our enterprise. So the SaaS world, for example, doesn't work anymore. All our enterprise customers want us to be on their private cloud behind their IT firewalls. So that the data secure, information is secure. That is number one. In terms of deploying AI safely, I think they're primarily looking at it in terms of always having a human in the loop, at least for high stakes kind of scenarios where there is a maker checker kind of approach, where you do some, whatever the AI produces is validated by a human before it goes out.
And at Needle, you focus heavily on turning the unstructured data into trusted insights, right?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
why working on the unstructured data the hardest, but most valuable part of AI, right? So
Yeah.
can you put some light on that?
Sure, sure. See, I think unstructured data is growing exponentially. Most enterprises, about 80 to 90% of data is actually unstructured data, and only 10 to 20% is structured data, right? And what resides in rows and columns and all of that is a very small fraction, which derives typically some high value business insights. But there are a lot of documents getting created. That is number one. There's a lot of information getting created. It could be scattered across emails, across PowerPoint documents, Word documents, so on and so forth. Second, all of this information is scattered and siloed. It resides in different kinds of repositories. It could be in your CRM, it could be in your SharePoint, so on and so forth. Third, what we are seeing is the following, right? Need for institutional memory, right? Because people come, people go. There is a lot of conversations, emails, institutional knowledge that gets lost as people come and go, right? So a key question is, how do you actually have access to all of this information? How do you retain the institutional knowledge? And how do you derive insights out of it, right? And unstructured data information could be in any form of images, it could be charts, it could be a sort of tables within a document, it could be something that's just written within a document, so on and so forth, right? So this is a very complex beast, and this is very hard to solve, right? Because like Donald Rumsfeld said, you don't know what you don't know. There is so much knowledge and nuggets that sits within the institution that gets lost, and we are sort of unearthing that value that would otherwise not be, you will not be able to extract out of it. And that's why it's a very hard problem. Because two things: one, you don't know where the information is, and even if it is, how do you get it out and reliably when you need it?
I want to zoom out a bit into the future of work.
Okay.
Looking 5 years ahead, what does a normal AI workplace look like for you?
Yeah. So I think what is happening, what we are seeing more and more is AI is eliminating sort of the boring and the tedious work, but it is not eliminating human judgment and human intelligence. So, I mean, to me, AI is just at some level, you can think of it as what automation enabled for you, right? I mean, when Excel came, did it mean that all financial folks went away, right? No, it actually quadrupled or quintupled. I mean, the number of what kind of output you could produce because you had Excel at your hand instead of manual calculation, yes, the value went through the roof, right? It's the same things. When compute came, it didn't eliminate jobs, right? It just accelerated value because it eliminated a whole bunch of boring work, and now people could be way more productive. So AI is sort of the next wave of productivity, which will eliminate a whole bunch of the grunge work that we throw people at, throw humans at and allow humans to be working at a higher level of abstraction, higher level of analysis, synthesis, so on and so forth.
Talking about the future again, what skills should students and early professionals focus on right now for the next 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah. So I think, see, the world is changing rapidly and dramatically. No skill that you have today, I would say any specific skill you have today can be outdated 2 years from now or obsolete 2 years from now. And you might need to learn some new skill and ability there. That's the rate
Okay.
of that we have today. So what you really need is, I think, the ability, just the two skills you need is curiosity and the passion to learn. That's the only two skills you need. And if you have the curiosity and ability to learn on your own, it doesn't matter. I mean, whatever technology comes up, you can keep up with it and you can keep going. Because I mean, the world today, what I do is dramatically how what I do or how I do things is dramatically different from how I was doing things 2 years ago. 2 years ago, what I did was dramatically different from how I did things 5 years ago. I grew up in an era or whatever. I was doing my college or masters when just the internet just started coming in, right? And I used the first browser, even before the browser, I've used the terminal to actually navigate the internet, right? Using something called links, Gopher and stuff like that. Then the World Wide Web came, and then it's been dramatic, right? And we used to dial up for whatever 28 kbps lines. I've seen the floppy disk here. Things are just changing very, 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 very fast. The only skill that you need is curiosity and desire to learn. Everything else is irrelevant.
What's the biggest mistake you see large enterprises, government enterprises are making now with AI?
So my sense is a lot of them are investing on the wrong things. So for example, building a large language model, right? As a government institution, organization, you shouldn't be building large language models. I think it's a waste of time. Mm, Because models are becoming commodity. There's a lot of, I
Mm.
mean, if you want to address research, I mean, there's a lot of other more interesting avenues of research coming up in AI that we should probably be focusing on. Few of these are, for example, how do you look at what's called test time scaling or reinforcement learning? I think that's a strong area of research. How do you move away, for example, from these transformer architectures? Because it's not clear to me it's the future of AI. There are more fundamental things that people should be looking at. The second thing is what expectations you have as outcomes from AI, right? I think people are just throwing money at doing some random pilot, something random, right? They're not really looking at actually what are the use cases where AI can have the highest ROI. And those are in very niche workflows, very boring workflows that you need to start looking at. You shouldn't be trying to do some rocket science and something fancy and glitzy. You should be looking at replacing a lot of grunge work, a lot of boring work that exists in organizations. So you can move the whole organization to higher value work. And that is what and it takes a lot of effort and time to identify those niches where you can bring in AI with high value and high ROI. And the second thing is, I think they don't have a clear way of measuring impact or understanding what impact could be, right? So if you run a pilot, run a POC, you should have very clearly defined success metrics as to why AI will work and what success would look like. This is why, for example, there was that MIT study which says 95% of the POCs of that's a huge.
We come to the last round, rapid fire,
Sure,
straight answers. Whatever first thing comes to your mind.
sure.
So, one AI tool you personally can't live without.
I think ChatGPT is something I use all the time.
Versus Gemini, ChatGPT.
I use both. It's just that I'm more used to now ChatGPT. But I do switch. Actually, I switch between when I really need to dig into something. I switch between ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. I use all of them. But the
Okay.
default tasks and questions, I go to ChatGPT.
Hype or real? Fully autonomous company.
Hype, not gonna happen.
One AI skill every student must learn in next 2 years.
Yeah, I mean curiosity and learning and
Learning.
exploiting AI to sort of helping AI augment your learning velocity.
Open source model or closed models for long term?
I think it doesn't matter. I think, see, it's all becoming commodity, in my opinion. Open source models today are about 9 months behind open source models, but the ability of open source models is going to plateau at some point of time, and soon it's going to become commodity. It won't matter which one you use.
One misconception people commonly.
That it is actually intelligent.
That's well put. And if you were it building Needl.ai, what problem would you want to solve with AI?
That's a great question. I would probably want to do something in the healthcare and life sciences space. That's something I would love to solve with. Yeah.
So we come to the end of it. Thank you. Thank you, Vikram, for such a grounded, thoughtful, and insightful conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Sachin. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me. I think the questions were great. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. What really stands out is your emphasis on trust and real impact AI has. For our listeners, especially students and early professionals, the biggest takeaway is AI is not replacing humans overnight, but augmenting better decisions if we build it responsibly. Thank you once again for joining us at 101 Talks with Sachin Menon.